Boy Wonder, COSSOM.
Good morning and welcome. Happy Hump Day. It's sort of prophetic, I suppose, that I'm dedicating the music to today's show to Drake. Happy Hump Day, Hump Day. The music that we selected is also sort of in honor to Demarco Murray in my chat that we're getting ready to play here in a few minutes with OJ Spivey. We sat down about the Olympics. He's a huge fan. We really haven't talked about the Olympics enough on this show, except, in terms of my them about it, and on the one hand how great it is for particularly for this country and the women, the female athletes who competed in that event, and so many groundbreaking moments this year, but also the tragic consequences of what these host countries do to host it. So we'll talk about that with OJ Spivey. First of all, happy birthday, Dave Chappelle. I missed the Chappelle show. I missed when Comedy Central did anything that held my interest. I can't remember the last time I watched anything on Comedy Central. I don't even have cable anymore. I stream most of my movies, most of the shows that I watch, which I don't even watch that many. I don't have a lot of time. When I do get free time, it's spent with things that hold my attention the most. Dark Matter is a show that I watch. I've been watching The Get Down. I need to finish it. I'm 4 episodes into it. There's 2 more. I need to find some time to finish it up. I've really enjoyed it. I think it's great. It's really good. So it's interesting that I think that we are definitely going to more to a streaming type of nation. I wonder how many cord cutters there are going to be, people who are simply cut the cord from mainstream cable providers who really offer terrible service. I mean, let's be real here. The service is horrible. And OJ and I talk a little bit about that too, particularly in regard to how NBC covered the event, the Olympics, and how you couldn't find anything. So it's a great discussion. I want to follow up on. We had a full show that was devoted to Gawker. Been a couple of weeks ago, and of course Gawker is now no more. The subblogs are going to live on. They've been purchased by Univision. I'm very curious to see what happens with those blogs. As you guys know, if you listen to this show or follow me out there on Twitter, which you can do at Sports by Sharona, you know that I'm a big fan. I read several of the subblogs very religiously, and it was a sad series of events. It was sad watching that go down. So I wrote a farewell to Gawker and shared some of my thoughts on, watching it go down and what I saw watching it go down, from the peanut gallery. And, I guess I was a little hard on Nick Denton. I think that, in real life, and if I had an opportunity to sit down and have a beer with him, I bet I would love Nick Denton to pieces. He seems like he's super smart. There's no question but that he is a super smart guy, and that what he accomplished with Gawker is truly amazing. It really was a standard bearer in a lot of ways, both good and bad, which we've touched upon. And the Hulk Hogan thing is, kind of a sad hill to die upon, I suppose, but yet here we are. So if you have an opportunity, you can check that out. It's called Farewell Gawker, You Had to Die. And it kind of chronicles a little bit about what the Hulk Hogan lawsuit was about, and how it went down, and what tragically it led to. And it lost in a lot of the coverage of that was really in holding the line there and standing his ground, his journalist at risk. You know, a free press is great and good, and yes, it's so important that I just can't even begin to find the words to describe how important it is. Yet, and you got to be pragmatic and practical about how you go about some things. And it really was a sad thing to watch. There was a very sad story out of France that I want to talk a little bit about, and we touched upon this in our Olympics coverage. There is a very concerning movement right now with regard to women and attire, and particularly Muslim women who wear what is called a burkini. And a burkini is a full coverage type of bathing suit, and it's preferred by some women. But we still have men in not just this country but worldwide who think that it is their God-given right to legislate women's bodies, and it is infuriating to no end. So several towns along the coast of France's coast have banned the burkini because we're living in a world where terrorism is a scary thing, and unfortunately we equate Islam as a religion with terrorism, which is wrong, and we should have a whole show on why that is wrong. So these towns have taken aim at the burkini, which has absolutely nothing to do with terrorism and everything to do with women and their choice of attire. But they've banned it. And so there was a woman laying on the beach in Nice, I believe it was, and she was wearing a burkini. Well, some, I'm sure, well-intending, if you could, say that, well-intending police officers made her remove her clothes because of this ban, and there have been many reports of this happening, and the police finding women, and it's awful. It's a shame, and we've to do something about this whole thought process. First of all, that that you can and should have the right to legislate my body and what I wear and things of this nature. It's a discussion that is long overdue, and we talk about that on this show quite a bit. I'll be tweeting out a link to this article if you missed it. It's infuriating in so many ways. I just can't even. It's interesting. We talked about this a little bit. Ryan Lochte and his story, and he's now come out and apologized. He's doing the redemption tour that you see when athletes do things that are bad, and they want to. He's lost endorsements and wants to try to rehabilitate his image. And he's a douchebag. There's no question. I don't think anybody had any doubt about that. And it looks like he lied about what happened. Some of his teammates snitched on him, and so he was sort of forced to come clean about that. But lost in all that whole thing was that Brazil's kind of douchey too, and there were many reports of extortion and bribery and things of that nature when it came to athletes attending the Olympics in that country. And so it's interesting that aspect of it sort of got lost in the whole brouhaha, because Ryan Lochte lied about it, and we tended to focus on that as opposed to, well, what really is Brazil doing here, and what happened in regard to to the bribery stuff. It's just interesting to me. We're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we're going to play our interview with OJ Spivey, and then after it's over, we're going to follow up with. I want to talk about the hour. Two of the four, Clay Matthews and Julius Peppers, I believe, are meeting with the commissioner and his cronies today regarding the report, the PEDS report. And I want to pose the question: what do fans want? Do you want Do you want doping in sports or not? Do you want, I think we're very stupid about PEDS and drug testing and the drug policy. But regardless, what do fans want? I think they just want to be mad at Roger Goodell, regardless. And it's certainly understandable because he brings a lot on him. We're going to talk a little bit about Nate Washington. I'll apologize for repeatedly mispronouncing Dorial Beckham Green, and then we'll talk a little bit about the guy who tweeted that he might murder his roommate and then did. So stay tuned in. You are listening to Back Talk with Sharona.
Now when they come to making money, I'm a printing press. And when they come to being trill, I'm the litmus test. Run it like a fitness test. And when they come to making history, I'm like Joe's son. A million ways to die, you already chose one. $1 million tech that sounds like a good beginning. We on the top.
All right, welcome back. I'm joined now by OJ Spivey. OJ's been on the show before. It's been a while. I'm so happy he was able to come back. He is a Philly guy. Last time he was here, we talked about the Eagles and the Sixers and the Flyers. We'll talk about that, too. We're going to really talk about the Olympics. It's not a topic that we've talked about as much as we typically do when it comes to sporting events. We did talk a little bit about some of my, how hard it is for me, with the Olympics, because I know the toll that it takes on these countries. But we'll go ahead and bring him in. Welcome back to the show. I really appreciate you sitting down with me.
Oh, hi, Sharona. It's great to be back. I love being on the show. Thanks for having me.
Well, I love having you, and it's been too long. I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. So tell everybody just a little bit about you and, what you do and how you came into sports.
Oh, wow. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version,
sure.
I've been a lifelong sports fan. Since I can remember, I guess maybe 4 years old, lifelong Philadelphian, of course, long-suffering Philadelphia sports fan. But I kind of got into broadcasting. I would say, actually, I was a late bloomer. I always wanted to be tied to sports, whether it be broadcasting or so. I would imitate a lot of the greats that you see on TV, especially with football. Like a lot of people, they point to Pat Summerall and John Madden, but I was a big NBC guy. I like more so Dick Enberg and those guys like that. Sure. But although I respected those people, but I kind of got into broadcasting school. Stumbled across broadcasting school because I wasn't a four-year college grad, and so and I said, okay, I always wanted to at least be on the radio. A lot of people talked about my voice going through high school. That talked about, I sound like I have a radio voice. Even still to this day, people stop me when they hear me talk.
Oh, yeah?
But yes. Yeah. But I don't particularly like my voice, by the way, but everybody tells me that I have.
Well, you do. You definitely do have, a voice that's sort of, and you're an attractive guy. You could be on TV. You've got, the voice and the face to do it.
Yep. Well, thank you for that. But I decided, since I was a big sports fan and, so many people told me about my voice, why not put two and two together?
Sure.
Just try to, actually, the big thing was the evolution of sports talk radio in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And then I said, wait, maybe that's something that I can do, even though I grew up as a shy kid. And then when I would hear some of the guys on the radio talk of sports, and more so I would hear them make picks, weekly football picks and predictions, playing the spread. I said, well, I could be just as wrong as these guys.
You could be a star.
Exactly.
I could be a star. Yeah.
So, it seems like, when you make it big, the ESPNs, Fox Sports, it seems like, you don't get paid unless you're wrong. It seems like you're paid to be wrong.
Yeah.
So and I say, okay, well, my goal was like, hey, I can, be wrong with them. Why don't I try to get paid for it too?
Yeah.
Exactly. So
yeah, no doubt.
Is, can't be any worse than theirs.
Well,
and I was able to catch a couple breaks. I started online. A local friend of mine heard my show, my online show, and he was doing local radio here in Philadelphia. He said, hey, why don't you come on with me? And then, one thing went to another, and I was actually did a radio show here in Philadelphia, terrestrial radio for 4 years, and, I still do the podcasting. So here I am.
Well, podcasting is so great because it does give, people who have traditionally been shut out from, there's not as much diversity. Things are changing, but there's definitely a need for more diversity and more.
Or to just do what you want. I mean, radio is great, and I enjoyed it. Terrestrial radio, AM, FM. No matter what city you're in, what market you're in, but you are limited in some aspects.
Sure.
It gives you maybe a little more visibility up front, but you are kind of handcuffed in what you can say and what you can actually talk about, because it's all about ratings. Ratings is big in podcasting too, but you have a lot more control over that.
You do. You have you have more freedom. I completely agree with that, and of course it's all about exposure, and that's the great thing about traditional sports radio. You see, I don't know about your timeline, but in my timeline, I see, so many people talk about how, they've gone away from that, and all they listen to now are podcasts and and what have you. So it's a great mechanism to use to express yourself. Now you're a Philly guy. You've I know that you watch and cover, and you talk about the Eagles and the Flyers and the Sixers. But before we started, you were talking to me a little bit about the Olympics, and you're a lifelong Olympics fan.
Yeah, I followed it ever since I was a kid, and I just love the sports. I love the different events.
The pageantry is really pretty amazing, isn't it?
It really is also, and I'm a big track and field fan.
Yeah.
And in fact, I became a runner as I've gotten older. I enjoy running. I mean, I can only do an 8-minute mile, but right. And I enjoy seeing the other sports. I mean, is it great to watch on television? And I guess this, probably something that we'll get a little more into. Not every sport is great to watch on television, but, I think you have an appreciation of, seeing a swimmer, seeing a Michael Phelps, seeing a Katie Ledecky, and, from a personal standpoint, seeing a Simone Manuel win the first gold medal as a African-American woman.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, the whole spectacle, it's just always been fascinating to me. I know the Olympics has been, trashed, and the International Olympic Committee is corrupt. But then when you say that, is it that much more corrupt than, let's say, college athletics? Because it's almost like you want to pick and choose what's corrupt and what's not corrupt. I mean, we could talk all day about college football and how they
what a meat market it is. And,
a meat market and the polling and of course the college football playoff was supposed to solve every problem, right? Not necessarily.
Right.
So
that's still a work in progress, but yeah, right. I mean it is pretty interesting. I think that's a great point because even though it's there's a lot of corruption in the world in general, and we could definitely spend like hours.
Is not exempt.
Yeah,
so,
and we could spend hours, and when you look at you mentioned college, but like even looking at the National Football League, and let's look at what the Rams owner did to the city of St. Louis, and then took his ball and ran to LA. And all the corruption surrounding that. I mean, that's and then you see the NFL acting like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and here are all the St. Louis fans, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, it's a cold world.
Yeah, it's very political, and it's not anything new, and it's almost like the NFL, the owners, they're able to hold not only the fans hostage, but the city and the states. I mean, it's happened in other cities.
Yeah.
We remember, we look back at what happened with the Colts and Baltimore, and then, they ended up getting their team from Cleveland, and you saw everything that went down with Cleveland. So
locally here with Tennessee and the Titans used to be the Houston Oilers and Bud Adams. Of course, now he didn't pack up in the middle of the night and move. I mean, that was kind of a protracted deal, and now, fortunately, Houston has their own team, but there's still a lot of hard feelings.
Yeah, and it's also a double-edged sword, too, because you have up-and-coming, states and cities. And I know, like Nashville, that's, one of the fastest-growing cities in America, longing for, professional sports, professional football team. They have a hockey team now. So, you have to look at both sides of the coin where maybe one city loses a franchise and then you have an up-and-coming city. You see hockey is coming to Vegas now. Who knows? Football might be next. So, it's a couple ways to look at it. But at the end of the day, it's not perfect.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that it took this long for Vegas. But back to the Olympics. And I understand that. I think for me, and we won't get into this. I just mentioned it because I want to talk about because the United States men and women's teams represented this country so well. But the thing that is so really concerning to me is what these countries do to their poor and getting ready to host the events. And what happened in Rio is unconscionable. I mean, it's just absolutely unconscionable. It's not like. And it happens. It doesn't happen here because there are greater. I mean, people were literally killed. Poor, but in particular, poor minority men were killed in order. They were moved and killed in order to make this happen, and it really, it's just troubling. But the event itself was, it was interesting because. I think, possibly for the first time, we had a sort of like a Bermuda's Triangle of different things. First of all, more people are streaming things than ever before. Mm-hmm. Second, NBC isn't particularly good at it. and third, we're living in an age of increased enlightenment and awareness of what it means to be a minority and what it means to be a woman. And you saw how the coverage of these events sort of intersected with all of that.
Yeah, it certainly did. And then you throw in Title IX as well. That's very huge to talk about also. Yeah. And NBC has been heavily criticized and
they just made dumb statements, I mean, in addition to the coverage itself being subpar, they made dumb statements, and it exhibited that they're so clueless.
Yeah, they are. And one thing I learned, Sharona, coming up in broadcasting, that you have a lot of executives, whether it be television, radio, they actually don't know what they're talking about. They like to tell you they think they know, but they really don't. And the last people who they consult are actually the viewers and the listeners. So, or actually, consult people who interact with everyday listeners, everyday viewers, what they want, So I know they go after the highest possible rating. They listen more so to advertisers than their viewers, and I get that. Make money. And, again, we see that with other sports as well. NFL is at the top of the list there. But, again, there's other ways that you can do things. And I guess they did take advantage of say, hey, if you want to see something live, log on to our website and see it on there. Mm-hmm. We're not going to make it available at your convenience.
Since you're such a big fan and I'm a more casual viewer, it's great for me to have you on the show so that I can pose these questions to you, as a devoted fan and someone, because when, the times that I went to watch it, first of all, I was incredibly confused about where to find him.
Yes. Me as well.
I couldn't find anything, and so I would find something and be thankful that I could find it. But that was the first thing I noticed, and that was frustrating to me as a consumer.
Yeah, it certainly was, and the only thing that seemed user friendly to me was number one, the gymnastics. And again, you get into the whole demographic thing. Okay, we want to cater to women, or we want to cater to the casual sports fan. Look, I enjoy gymnastics just as much as anyone. But the two
gymnastics is one of my favorite events.
It certainly is, yes. And I think the Olympics as a whole, they do a great job, and just not so much the TV production, but just the whole setup. But also the between the gymnastics and between basketball, those are the two sports that I could find the easiest. But everything else is like, okay, I would get notifications on my phone. Yeah. Okay, let's watch a boxing. You'll say boxing. This person is going for a gold medal, and then I look on my channels. I have DirecTV, and I can't find it. It's only streaming online. So yeah, it was quite frustrating.
I was out of town, and because I don't have cable, but I was out of town and was in a place where they had Dish, and they had a channel that was devoted to you finding the coverage, and it's still it was still confusing, right? I couldn't find anything, and so it was like, and I know that there were a lot of criticisms of the fact that so many of the events weren't live and were aired after the fact and what have you. Given the magnitude of the event, though, if you were advising, them, how can they better serve the consumers by doing this?
Well, I think for one, it is a challenge because, of course, the Olympics. Yeah, so many events too, and then you have the time zones. I forget the exact time zone that Rio de Janeiro is in, but it's not in the continental United States. Most of the time, it's not in North America. Even if you had it in Los Angeles, which they're lobbying for the 2024 Olympics, by the way, you have a 3-hour difference. Maybe you can control it there more so there as opposed to the East Coast. Everything is catered to the East Coast in the United States. Everything's catered to New York City. Everything's catered to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. So they're going to center all the broadcasting behind that because that's what they feel the advertisers, where they can get the most advertising dollars. That's where they feel they can get the most highest rating. But they have to do a better job. And again, it goes back to consulting the consumer, right. Especially when you have all these live streaming channels. You have people can access it on their phone. Mm-hmm. They can access it on their computer. You have to do a better job in consulting the viewer and say, okay, what would you like to see? It never hurts to have a focus group.
It doesn't. Well, and that's also kind of problematic too, because NBC came out and acted like they knew what their consumer was, and completely got it wrong in terms of of everything. And we've talked about, I don't want to beat a dead horse, we've talked about that on this show. I want to ask you, because I think it's so important to focus on this, and it is truly amazing what some of the young women were able to do. As a black male watching, young women like Simone Manuel, and did I pronounce her name correctly?
Yes, Manuel, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What does that mean to the community to see that happen?
Wow, that's an awesome question. If whoever saw Simone Manuel win her individual gold medal live, I think the one thing NBC did great was actually their color analysts. Mm-hmm. Their color analysts are actually better than the play-by-play guys.
Yeah, okay.
Color analyst was a multi-gold medalist himself, and he captured the moment. It's almost like he understood the moment before it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Simone Manuel wasn't a favorite to win that race. Oh. There were two Australian sisters who were the favorites to win that race. Not only did she pass them, she passed the one favorite, Kate Campbell. She passed her sister as well. And again, she tied with the Canadian Olesiak, I think her name is, for the gold medal. But he captured the moment. And, this goes way back. And just like maybe some of the other sports that maybe sooner than swimming, you can look back at tennis with the Williams sisters. You can look back at golf with Tiger Woods. This was the same concept with swimming with Simone Manuel because, you have the stereotypes that come. Black people, women in particular, don't want to get their hair wet. It goes along the lines
many
of
stereotypes.
The different stereotypes and everything. Black folks don't swim for whatever reason, but a lot of that is access. Yeah. It's access.
Well, yeah, I mean,
was no different than golf, tennis.
Where are the swimming pools located? They're not located in traditionally black neighborhoods, are they?
Exactly.
And
you do have public pools. You do have recreational pools, which are run by the city and sometimes the state. But again, depending on the economy, they're not always accessible. I remember one year in Philadelphia, they couldn't open the public pools because of money.
Yeah.
And, most inner city folks, whether it be black, white, or nationality, not everyone can pay to go to a swim club. Not everybody can pay to go to a tennis club. So, you have a whole lot of factors as to why things were. But it's also, too, I don't want to lose the concept of what Simone Manuel did. It was an inspiration also because, that will inspire, others to swim,
Yeah. The whole concept of being able to look and see someone who looks like you and know that you're able to do that is so undervalued and underrated, don't you think?
It certainly is. And, as you mentioned, being a minority, being a woman, I thought it was also a great story, too, with the Olympics, the woman that won the triathlon, Gwen Jorgensen. She was pretty content being a CPA, an accountant. She was an athlete, but, she had a good job as an accountant. But she was motivated to win a triathlon. And a lot of people said that she couldn't do it. I mean, it is a women's event, to swim for a mile, bike a couple miles, and then, run a mini marathon. That's hard for any person to do, male or female. But, you see the inspiration there. That's what I like about the Olympics. It inspires regular people, everyday people to, do what's seemingly impossible.
Yeah, and didn't Dorothy Dandridge, wasn't there, several years ago, wasn't there an incident where she was being photographed and she stuck her foot or toe or into a pool?
Dorothy Dandridge, Lena Horne. It happened in Nat King Cole. I mean, I saw a documentary on Nat King Cole where, he was living in Los Angeles of all places. His family couldn't go to the pool in his complex. It goes on and on.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us collectively as a country and as Americans, particularly when you look at the political climate that we're living in and what's going on with Donald Trump and the people who support him, to understand that these things are real. That racism was real and that it had such a great impact on so many things, and it really was. I'm getting choked up. Let me fan myself real quick. It was so great to see, and we could go on and on and on. Simone Bridges, so many young women doing so well, and unfortunately there was a byproduct of it with some of the criticisms. But we're living in a time where women are speaking up and speaking out more and more, and we're starting to see that those kinds of criticisms aren't going to be tolerated anymore.
No, they're not. And, look, whether it's about hair, the way you conduct yourself, you do, at this age of social media, you are going to have people that's going to, back folks up. And, not only athletes, but, you'll see celebrities who will have, each other's backs. So that was proud to see. And, again, you mentioned the political aspect of it. When you see everything that happened with the Olympics, the swimmers getting half the medals, half the gold medals, track and field getting almost the other half, and then you had a few other sports here and there. When you talk about America, the one thing I like about the Olympics beyond all the politics is when it's diverse, when it's people from all walks of life participating, representing your country, and not just you, I say any country. That's the best reflection of America.
It really is. Yes, I completely agree. And it was, despite some of the, Ryan Lochte and some of the other things, it was great moments for the United States. There's so much to talk about, and I don't want to keep you too long. I definitely want to get...
No, that's fine.
Yeah, we're going to have to move on and talk about the Eagles. Really interesting. The Titans just made a trade with them for, I believe his name is Daniel...
Dorial Green Beckham.
Yeah,
yes.
we gave you guys.
Receiver.
Yeah, we gave you guys.
Perhaps the savior for this subpar receiving core.
Yeah, we gave you guys Dorial Beckham Green, and you gave
Dennis Kelly. Yes.
Dennis Kelly. That's who I was trying to think of. I wanted to get your thoughts on Dennis Kelly, and find out what you think about him in terms of being a swing kind of offensive lineman.
Yeah. Well, Dennis Kelly is pretty much what you call he's a career backup, basically. He can play a little bit tackle, he can play a little bit guard, but I wouldn't rely on him more so to do anything but to back up. If he can go in for, let's say, someone has an injury, one of the linemen maybe, strained his calf muscle, or
there's nothing wrong with depth.
Yeah, exactly. Or pull a groin or something like that. He's someone that you can plug in for maybe a half or two, or maybe a game or so. But if you're relying on Dennis Kelly to come in as a permanent replacement, or to someone to replace an injured lineman for the rest of the season, he's not that type of guy. Again, he's a hard worker. He can conduct himself well as an average lineman, but to ask any more of that, that would be pushing it.
Yeah, it does seem like he's. I've been working on a roster.
Big guy, though.
Yeah, yeah. I've been working on a roster analysis, and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to put him on there or not. I think one more game I'll have a better sense of that. Definitely some opportunity with the Eagles for Dorial Beckham Green, but he is a guy. Dorial Green Beckham. I'm sorry. I keep.
We call him DGB.
DGB. I know. I keep getting it backwards, which is fine. I don't care. I wasn't a fan of the draft pick, and frankly,
he came out of college a lot of issues.
But
he does have some talent. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you? And there were already rumblings. The Titans are starting to have some decent depth at some positions, and wide receiver. With the acquisition of picking up Andre Johnson, he seems to be doing pretty well. When you consider his last year in Indy, DGB's roster spot might have been, in jeopardy. And plus, they wanted to send a message to Justin Hunter too. What do you expect? It sounds like he's going to make the roster. What do you think expectations are for him?
I believe he'll certainly make the roster because, for one, the Eagles are so desperate for wide receiver help. They don't have receivers who really have breakaway speed, but the ones who do have a little bit of speed, let's say your Josh Huff, who was a Chip Kelly guy out of Oregon, he has the speed, but he doesn't have the hands. He doesn't have the route running or the work ethic. You can't depend on him. Eagles' number one pick, Nelson Aguilar, highly touted coming out of USC, had a pretty good college career, but he's still having trouble making that adjustment. I don't know if it's just
he's got some off-the-field stuff too, doesn't he?
Well, he did have a off-the-field incident at a gentleman's club here in Philadelphia, but those allegations were thrown out. So he was totally cleared on that.
Well, but they're saying though that the prosecutor is kind of in bed with the Eagles organization, and there might have been with that and with the Shady incident, there might have been some greasing of the wheels, so to speak.
That could be with any city, but really when you talk about athletes, when athletes are big stories. So if you see an athlete who really gets in trouble and there's evidence there, they're going to nail the guy. And of course, you had Big Bad Roger Goodell. If he saw anything to where you violate the personal conduct policy, he's pretty much going to be in the ear of the team and all. So, but again. He does pick and choose too, but
he only gave Josh Brown one game, and so we could talk about that. What are the quarterback situation is interesting. Hey, Mark Sanchez? Is he going to come back? What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, Sanchez is now in Denver now.
Yeah, but they're saying he might get released.
Yeah. I don't think he'll come back I don't think he'll come back to the Eagles. They're pretty set because, for one, they paid Bradford a lot of money to come back, not knowing that they were going to be able to get Carson Wentz. And they also paid Chase Daniel a lot of money. Chase Daniel, as a backup, is making $7 million a year. So he's basically there to show everyone Doug Peterson's system, how he likes to, run offense. So Daniel's not going anywhere. Of course, Bradford's going to be here at least one more year with the 2-year option. And then, again, they went all out for Wentz. But see, that's the problem that a lot of Eagles fans have here in this city, because they're going to have their cake and eat it too with the quarterbacks. For one, they still want to try and win with Sam Bradford, but then again, you move up not only one slot, but you move up 2 slots to go all out and get Carson Wentz, and you gave up a lot to get him.
You certainly did.
He's not going to play this year.
Yeah.
What high draft pick? When you look back at recent NFL history, what high draft pick at quarterback sat out an entire year? You don't find many, if any. So Eagles fans kind of know to where they don't have a whole lot of faith in Sam Bradford. They want him to compete, of course, but they don't have a whole lot of faith because, of course, you have Carson Wentz rather sitting in the wings. The fans here, they want to see Carson Wentz. I was at the last Eagles open training camp. They had 2 open training camps open for fans at Lincoln Financial Field, their home field, of course, home stadium. And Carson Wentz, he had since been injured, but he was on the field, and the fans, they followed his every move. He was in street clothes. He was in sweats. Even coming off the field, everybody was still saying, "We want Wentz. We want Wentz." Hollering at him to come over and sign autographs. No one cares about Sam Bradford here.
Yeah.
They really don't.
I can believe that. It's all about the promise in the future. Doug Peterson, first year, what are the expectations for the Eagles?
Well, it's really a wait and see. When you talk to most people, he's basically Andy Reid Jr.
Yeah.
and that's true to an extent. That can have its good and bad things.
Yeah, right.
Andy Reid, worst come to worst, he's going to bring stability to a franchise. He's brought that Kansas City playoffs, not so much, but Andy was very successful here.
Let me ask you this. I don't mean to interrupt you. Andy Reid, is he underrated or overrated in Philly?
Now, if you ask people now, he's underrated because of what they went through with Eagles fans went through with Chip Kelly.
Yeah.
But you do have a small minority who think Chip Kelly should have still been here, should have still been given one more year to try to, fix everything or put everything into place because, of course, his 3rd year here in Philadelphia, he was given the keys to the Ferrari, and it didn't work out so well.
It was a big whoop.
Yeah, exactly. But, looking back on it, Andy Reid had 5 division titles, 4 in a row, actually. So when you look back at what Andy Reid did, successful 5 NFC championship games, or he only got over the hump to get to the Super Bowl once, he and McNabb collectively. And I think also, too, Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, and his brass, they look at Andy Reid as being an underrated, too. Was it time for him to go at the time? Yes, because 14 years is a long time for a coach without winning a Super Bowl. But that's one of the main things they wanted to do. They felt like Chip Kelly so much damaged the franchise that they wanted to get back to stability. I thought it was a little too much of a safe pick for my liking. But the Eagles ownership and management, they want to find that stability, and they felt like Doug Peterson was the best guy for it. Andy Reid also did a lot of lobbying to get Doug Peterson this job. It seems like they just Andy Reid was his agent. Well, actually, they do share the same agent.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah, they do. But he lobbied heavily for Doug Peterson to get this job. It's what they're familiar with, and they're taking a shot to try to get back to some stability.
I like Doug Peterson. The situation with the offense in Kansas City, we could spend hours talking about it too. We're not going to get a chance really to talk about the Flyers or the Sixers, because I do want to ask you, as a guy who saw Demarco Murray in Philly last year, what can Titans fans expect from him?
Well, Titans fans can expect I think DeMarco Murray still has a lot in the tank. I think it was more so the scheme. Everybody blames DeMarco Murray's shortcomings in Philadelphia to the many carries that he's had. He did have a bad rap of being a bad teammate here. He wasn't the most popular guy in the locker room. But then again, when you come up from a franchise like the Dallas Cowboys, you talk about Jerry Jones, you talk about the glamourism that is the Cowboys, and of course, Eagles fans hate the Cowboys here, and I'm sure a lot of other teams hate the Cowboys as well. So that's not any different. That's just to the 10th power up here. But as far as DeMarco Murray is concerned, I do think he does have a lot left in the tank. A lot of it was the scheme. A lot of it was the atmosphere here with Chip Kelly. Although he brought him here, you saw a little bit of that preseason. Of course, you take preseason with a grain of salt, but I think he can have a very successful career in Tennessee. He's going to get the ball a lot, and I think by him getting the ball a lot, that's going to help Marcus Mariota a lot more. I think both of them can help each other as players, and who knows? I think they're going to have a pretty good offense just because of those two guys, and in particular, DeMarco Murray's presence.
Do you think that there were allegations against DeMarco Murray, and he was infamously called spray tan, and allegedly he murked a teammate's wife, and you had an affair with her? Do you think that had an effect on his relationship with other guys in the locker room?
It probably did, and there were also allegations that he didn't try hard on the field. You can probably look back at some of the Eagles film last year. There were a couple plays to where he might have broken outside or went to the sidelines out of bounds instead of taking on that extra tackler. But again, a lot of that was the atmosphere. It was Chip Kelly's atmosphere. Hey, perennial All-Pro veteran tackle Jason Peters, he quit on Chip Kelly. So it wasn't just DeMarco Murray. I think he was probably made one of the scapegoats here in Philadelphia because Chip Kelly was the one who brought him in. So and you saw with the offseason, Howie Roseman, the general manager, he did a lot to unwind the damage that Chip Kelly did here by unloading a lot of players, Murray, Maxwell, those type of players.
Yeah, but it says a lot when a guy's not willing to put his body on the line for a team.
It does. And again, the film never lies. The camera never lies. So that was sort of egregious when you see it on film. It's like, hey, he could have got, maybe 5-10 more extra yards. So that never looks good on film, and you're certainly going to hear about it.
Interesting. Well, I certainly hope that he has a better, for the Titans' sake. I hope that he has a better season. OJ, it was such a pleasure to have you back on. I hope that you'll come back and we can talk about the Sixers and the Flyers, and maybe even talk a little bit about the the men's Olympic basketball team, because there were some things I wanted to ask you about that. We just ran out of time.
Sure.
Yeah. So tell everybody where they can find you and find your work and stuff.
Okay, well, you can follow me on Twitter at OJ Philly. Very simple. All of my access to my show. I do a podcast now called The Pod. You could just go and look up The Pod Show. It's on Blog Talk Radio. I also have a blog, a Tumblr blog. I put a little bit of my thoughts on there, opinions. But you can always find me on Twitter at OJ Philly, and you can access everything with OJ Spivey there.
All right, thanks again.
All right, thanks, Sharona. My pleasure. Anytime.
I just love when I'm with you. Yeah, this shit is on 10. We used to be friends, girl, and even back then, you would look at me with no hesitation.
All right, great stuff from OJ Spivey. I'm very curious to see what the Eagles do this coming season. Their quarterback situation is interesting. Mark Sanchez likely going to be released. Where will he land? Nate Washington, we're going to talk about Nate Washington in a minute, another veteran guy who just got released by the Patriots. I was a little bit surprised by that, but definitely going to be interesting to see what Dorial Green Beckham. I finally got it right. I've been juxtaposing his last two names. I don't know why. It just sometimes things happen like that. Apologies to him for doing that. He's the guy that definitely has some talent, but comes with uh, the off the field stuff that we alluded to, and we won't really get into all of that. But it's concerning, always concerning to me when teams just ignore guys who have issues with violence against women when they're in college. And of course, he infamously missed an entire year of football. And he was behind the eight ball anyway, and with already questions regarding his work ethic and dedication to learning the playbook and things of that nature. It does seem like, possibly his career might be in jeopardy. It's sad to see a guy like that, waste his talent. But yeah, here we are. So I don't know. Yeah, the Nate Washington situation. Of course, Nate started out in Pittsburgh with the Steelers and was a guy from a real small college, and he's a great NFL success story in that he was able to compile. He's probably been in the league 10 years now, somewhere around there, and that he's been able to compile such a resume is pretty impressive. The average career span of an NFL player, roughly about 3.5 years. So if you make it to that, I think that you get vested at 4 years. If you make it, if you become a vested vet, that's saying quite a lot. It's an accomplishment, and so it's sad to see Nate get released. I was a little bit surprised. Their wide receiver, I guess they've got more confidence in their young guys than I expected. I expected them to. Lord, I can't talk this morning. So, but I wish Nate the best. I'm going to be watching to see if he gets picked up somewhere. I still think that he's got talent. Andre Johnson, looked washed up in Indianapolis last season, and he might possibly make the Titans roster. So I don't see the Titans bringing him back. They've got numbers and decisions to make. Where would Nate Washington end up? Possibly, we'll have to give that some thought. Maybe follow up on that. I should have asked OJ about this Ryan Lochte thing. We sort of touched upon that whole corruption thing when it comes to the Olympics in Brazil in particular, and it's still troubling to me that, and I know what Ryan Lochte did was wrong, and he lied about it, and that's wrong. And how we talk about things is always interesting to me, and that the corruption aspect of it just completely and utterly got buried in the coverage was just mind-boggling. I don't know. What we pay attention to is very interesting, and then of course then there's the Al Jazeera thing, and here we are talking about PEDs. Do fans want doping in sports or not? I mean, I'm not sure, because we've got rules against it, and those rules need to be enforced if you care about it, which quite frankly, I think we're very hypocritical about it. I don't care about it nearly as much as some people, yet, here we are with allegations of PED use against the Al Jazeera 4, and people are mad that the NFL want to investigate it. I don't know what fans want, except to be mad, and to be mad at Roger Goodell, who certainly is a worthy figure to draw their ire because of their inability to do things wrong. I don't have a problem with them investigating this situation. What I do have a problem with, that fans don't seem to be having a problem with, is the Josh Brown thing. We're supposed to be having a 6-game suspension, renewed interest and renewed focus on violence against women, and yet the NFL just can't seem to get that right, and I don't understand. I'm very underwhelmed by the so-called commission of women who are supposed to be advising Roger Goodell on this. You could ask how much is he listening to them? What are they actually advising him? What are they telling him? Josh Brown getting a 1-game suspension, what was reported to be at least 20, if not more, separate incidents of violence against his wife, including some of them when she was pregnant with their child. I mean, that's just infuriating. 1 game for that, it's infuriating. So I don't know. It's an interesting deal, and we're definitely living in a time where I'm not sure fans know what they want. We a clickbait nation, and we're all upset about Harambe. I'll have to add that to the list because it's kind of an interesting thing. I'll sit and watch my social media timeline scroll by, and I sort of gerrymander, cherry pick what I look at and what I don't. First of all, I don't have a lot of time to spend on things that are probably funny, but maybe a little bit silly. But I did notice, and I want to talk about this, and then we'll get Jennifer Eakins in here. Football fix. We'll talk some Denver Broncos. We'll see what Jennifer has to say about the Olympics and all of that. But it's interesting. One of the things that was quite popular, so trending, I guess is a better way to say it, on social media yesterday is the story about a guy who tweeted out that his roommates, I think his roommate was driving him. He needed to chill out or he might end up killing him, and he did. As it turned out, this guy did end up killing his roommate, and that became kind of a trending topic, a big thing. Everybody was tweeting about it, and you had stories coming out about it. And I understand, you got to get the clicks, ad revenue. You have to make money to pay money. You have to be a profit-making enterprise in order to pay your workers. I get it. I get that. Yet it reminds me of this Donald Trump thing, and how we go about reporting on certain things and not making terrible people famous. That drives me nuts that we make terrible people famous, like this guy who was tweeting about killing his roommate and then did. I think there's an element to that you see in some of these more high profile mass murder situations. Megalomaniacs wanting to be famous, wanting their name to live in infamy. So, while it's newsworthy, on the other hand, it's playing into that whole mentality of doing something awful to get, being awful to get that attention. And I don't have any answers to it, right? I mean, I'm just saying it bothers me, and I don't know, how do we fix that? How do we report on a Donald Trump, and yet do it in a way that doesn't make him, he doesn't have to buy ad revenue. He doesn't have to spend ad revenue. He doesn't have to use his campaign finances to advertise and say he's free advertising all the time, and it's just sad. I don't have any answers. I'm just saying we've got to come up with a way to make things better, and I don't know how we do that, but it's very troubling that you can be that kind of awful, terrible person and get the notoriety and by killing someone or killing multiple people, and it's I don't think that it says good things about who we are as a society when that's a thing. But I guess that's just me. It was definitely a popular thing out there. Just real quick, the Bolt thing, Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, a Jamaican runner who is whose athleticism is amazing and all of that. I apparently he cheated on his girlfriend. There were pictures. I paid no attention to this story because I do not care. I know that the private lives of famous people is, it's kind of a business thing, but, and he's definitely out here sharing it. And so it's not like it's a secret or anything. It's not, it's not a situation where someone's privacy is being invaded or what have you, because he's the one doing the sharing. And, apparently she's cool with that, and that's fine. That's their relationship. And, I certainly am not one to judge someone's relationship. And if she's cool with it, and apparently she is, because, from all appearances, everything's fine and dandy in Boltland. So I don't know. It's just interesting what we pay attention to and what we don't, and the things that kind of drive traffic and the things that don't. So I don't know. We'll take a quick break. When we come back here, we're going to talk some fantasy football. We're going to talk about the Denver Broncos. So stay tuned in. You are listening to Back Talk with Sharona. All right, welcome back. You're listening to Back Talk with Sharona. I am your host. My name is Sharona. Happy Hump Day. It's Wednesday. We're halfway there, almost to the weekend. Everybody's working for the weekend. We're going to be doing a Friday show. We didn't get a chance to do a Down and Dirty this week. Down and Dirty is kind of a new podcast that we introduced a few weeks ago, where we did just like a quick hit and talked about some hot topics. Talked about some things that are popular or, important from my perspective, things that interest me. And we didn't get a chance to do that because we had so many different things. It was a great show on Monday. We had an opportunity to sit down with Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and have a discussion with him about policing and what we can do to better increase communication between police officers and communities. And that's an ongoing conversation. We'll continue to talk about that. And I'm still on Friday. Right now I still have not listened to the Sports Illustrated podcast. That is on my list. And I want to read the book that the gentleman wrote as well. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the swimsuit edition for Sports Illustrated. I think that's an important topic. Sort of ties into, the whole what women wear thing. We're joined now by Jennifer Eakins. Jennifer's been on this show a lot before. It's been a while since we've had her on, so I'm very excited to have her. Hey, Jen, thanks for joining me.
Hi, good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. A little bit chaotic this morning, but I'm doing well.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good too. It's always chaotic, seems to be around here. We live in busy, interesting times. Things have changed for you, although I think the last time we did a Super Bowl show. I think it was the last time you and I had a chance to sit down. You were just getting ready to make your big announcement. So I want to get going with you, updating everybody about what's going on with you and what's going on with you in terms of your writing and coverage and stuff.
Yeah, I think it was still under wraps at that point that I am now writing for 4for4 Football. So it's very interesting, and it's been really fun. I've been involved in the fantasy football realm for quite a while, but I've never actually written, professionally for it. So it's been very interesting. It's interesting going kind of from the more like fun, just, side to like more analytic stats. That's not really the type of person that I am. So it's kind of interesting. I'm having to kind of learn as I go and like, train my brain to be more, left-brained because I'm very right-brained. But it's been really fun. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it's a great website, and I'm so happy for you. So well deserved. You're so great. You're one of my favorite people, and it really couldn't have happened to a more worthy person. Yeah, it is interesting because I too have added something to my resume, and I'm writing for Inside the Pylon, and they're very technical guys too. And we
Ooh, I
use
didn't know
Slack.
that. That's exciting.
Yes,
Sorry.
and we
I
use
didn't mean to
Slack.
interrupt,
No,
but
no,
I'm
no.
I'm excited for you.
Oh no, you can interrupt me anytime. It's no problem at all. So I'll be sitting in Slack and just watching the conversations and stuff, and they couldn't have been more gracious. And so but it is. You're right. It is. It's definitely a learning process, and learning Slack has been. I've used Slack before when I was writing for SB Nation, and I liked it. I've recommended it actually to a couple of people. But it's interesting because since I had used it, technology is constantly changing. But they have this thing called Slackbot, which is actually it's kind of like Siri or Cortana, if you use Apple or Microsoft products, and it's interesting because it'll actually have a conversation with you, and I'm like, the machines
That's
are
so
sentient.
funny.
It's Skynet, but yeah. So, well, I'm so excited to have you, and we'll talk some fantasy football. But before we get there, I want to get an update with you about the Denver Broncos. Their quarterback situation is very interesting. It sounds like they're going to release Mark Sanchez. Is Paxton Lynch going to be the guy?
I don't think initially, I think they're really happy with Simeon. And it's funny because a lot of people think he came out of nowhere, but they really liked him last year too, as far as what he was, and I think, he's always had a great arm, and that's why they drafted him to begin with, and that's why, because they were, back when, when Peyton was around, obviously there was Peyton, and then there was Brock, and then there was that third slot, and they had Zach Dysert there for a little bit. And then they got rid of him, and then they got Simeon, and he's an interesting, he's a smart guy, and he's got a great arm, and so I think, a lot of people are worried about his experience. Yes, I think he's had one real kneel down in actual, regular season. However, he knows the playbook really well, and then you've got Lynch is young, and he's walking into fresh stuff here, so. Personally, from my perspective, I think they should hold off on Lynch as long as they can. I know other people think, why not just throw him out there? But for me, I think back to like David Carr, and how he got crushed week in and week out. And I'm like, this poor kid, there's just no reason to throw him out there. I mean, with the defense they have, they just don't need it. I mean, we all know Peyton was horrible last year, and they won the Super Bowl. So I don't think they need to rush this kid. He's going to be, Paxton Lynch is going to be fantastic at some point. I don't think they're going to throw him out there right away. And I think, Simeon is young as well, but he knows, he knows the playbook. And I think, he has outplayed Sanchez for the most part, so far. I'm in camp and preseason. So I think that's what they're going to do. And, I kind of feel bad for Sanchez a little bit. I think he came in here thinking that the job was his, and he did as much as he could. He definitely got out in the community, and he made himself a Bronco.
Right?
I just think his skill set, exactly. I just think he just isn't that good, and unfortunately that's kind of the problem, He did everything right, as far as coming into Denver and doing what he needed to do. It just, I think, like you said, he's just kind of limited.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really like Paxton Lynch as well. But we live in a time where, these young quarterbacks are getting thrown into the fire earlier and earlier, and that the temptation is going to be there.
Well, right. I think it depends on the way it plays out. I think if Simeon doesn't play well, then obviously everyone's going to be calling for Lynch early, and, I don't know. This town it's a tough town quarterback-wise, and, coming from Elway, it was forever. I mean, until Peyton got here, it was just a constant – with Cutler and with Orton and Plummer, and, there's always who's next.
Well,
no one's going to...
You can't not say Tim Tebow.
Oh, yeah. I blocked that out, the Tim Tebow part. Yeah. And actually, there's been so much talk about him because he worked out for the Rockies. So, everyone around here is all fired up. Like, oh, he's going to be back here again. I'm like, oh, please. No. I don't want him in the city anymore.
It's so crazy with the quarterback situation being what it is, and there's definitely some potential for some crappy quarterback play. When you got young guys like that, how much criticism do you think Denver's going to take if that does happen in light of them just letting Brock Osweiler walk?
I think people are over the Brock. I mean, it was a long time. I mean, it was a while. I mean, it was definitely a while in this town as far as local radio and whatnot. I mean, he was a topic for a long time. But I think people are kind of over it. I think it also depends on how Brock does. Now, if he goes, if he comes out guns blazing and he's fantastic for Houston, then I think people obviously will, be back on that. But I think a lot of people realize that. Brock didn't really want to be here at the end. Elway, they gave him, a fair offer, and I think that he really had checked out already. I mean,
Why do you think that is?
I think, the insiders say that basically when they made the decision to put Peyton back in, and Peyton took over, I think it was that San Diego game. I think it was week 16 or 17 when, Brock had been starting for a few games. And then when they decided to put Peyton back in and it was his team again, I think Brock just, he kind of checked out. He was like, they obviously don't value me. They don't want me. And I think he kind of, from what I've heard from, other people, he kind of stopped associating himself with the team. He didn't really talk to a lot of people, in between, the Super Bowl and – free agency. Like, he just wasn't really involved, and I think people knew he had one foot out the door.
To me, that's a really bad sign. I mean, that's a really bad sign from a guy. You got to be able to handle competition and adversity like that.
Yeah, and it's Peyton Manning. It's not like they put in some. Yeah, and I think it's that was just a unique situation. I mean, you have a future Hall of Famer. And in his obviously it was his last season, and I think that's kind of what had to be done. And I think. Brock should have just stepped aside. I mean, his time was, it would have been his team this year. And I just think he, it's a little bit of sour grapes, and he kind of just said peace out. And, I mean, he got, to be fair, he got a lot of money from Houston. So, I mean, of course he took it, and that's,
Well, certainly a change of pace change of scenery can be good. But it's very troubling to hear a guy check out on his team like that, but basically quit on his team like that.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much.
Yeah.
Which is why I wasn't surprised when he left, and I think a lot of people, just judging by the way his actions, people knew he was leaving. I was definitely surprised though that Elway didn't go after someone a little better. They didn't go more. After Fitzgerald, or not that he's great, but he's definitely better than Sanchez, and they just kind of chose to continue, with their defense. They also, they bolstered their O-line, which was very necessary. I mean, the offensive line looks way better. I mean, they were horrible last year. So I think, if they do end up playing Lynch, hopefully he won't get mauled, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting that that they're going with the young guys, but it worked out for Indianapolis, right? With Andrew Luck and all that.
And I mean, you look about Tampa Bay, Tennessee. I mean, they're those young guys are, they threw both, Mariota, they throw them out there, and Winston, and they both did well. I mean, as far as for what they had and what they were, and this year should only be better for both of them. So, I guess no one really knows.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely be interesting to watch that go down. I want to ask you about the Broncos defense. Obviously, the story for the Denver Broncos, besides the Peyton Manning thing, and you can't undersell that. That was a great story. But the Broncos defense was so dominant and so good, particularly in the Super Bowl. Can they maintain that dominant status?
Yeah, I think so. I think they may. I mean, I hate to throw this out there, but they may even be better. They're looking really good this year. I know. People think, I mean, last year, nobody, going into it, nobody thought they were going to be good, and I knew they were. They just have so much depth. I mean, there's guys, I think guys, three people deep on the depth chart would start in any other defense. There's some really good players on this team, and, they lost two key guys. They lost Malik Jackson and Danny Trevathan, both great. However, they're just so deep. I mean, there's guys that, but you also have a couple injuries we have to worry about. DeMarcus Ware is not, 100%, and he's older, so I don't think he's going to play as much. I think they're going to kind of save him, I hate to say save him for the playoffs, but I think that they're, that's going to be kind of an idea in their head. I don't think he's going to play nearly the amount of snaps that he's been seeing.
Yeah.
And you have a Keith Talib who.
Him.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you about Demarco Ware because I'm a big fan of old man football, and let's face it, he's got, he is a guy who, as dominant and good as he still is, and amazing, and very easy to look at as well. At some point, old man time being undefeated and all of that. How much longer do you think Demarco Ware can be as good and as dominant as he has been?
I think it depends on how much they use him. I think he might, this could be his last year. He may get another one out of him. I think it depends. I think, like I said, I think they're going to not use him as much so that he's a little bit fresher. I mean, back injuries are tough. I mean, they're tough for anybody, even just standing up or sitting down or, whatever. So, and sadly, as we saw last year with Peyton, when Father Time does come a knocking, sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's, Peyton, it seems like went from, 100 to like 30 in 2 seconds, and I think, unfortunately, that tends to happen. So, if they can keep him kind of fresh this year where he's just in limited snaps, he may get another year out of him, but I don't know. He also, he's had an excellent career, and he has a ring now, so he may choose to walk away before he really can't walk,
Yeah. Yes, and that would be a wise decision. It's hard, though, when you're used to the camaraderie and the competitiveness and, football or whatever sport, whatever activity really it is that you engage in. It's hard to walk away, and you always think that you still have it, and because you have to have that mindset to be as good and as dominant as he is. It's kind of like the Tim Duncan, I suppose, of the of the Broncos.
I think what's interesting with that is I think some players are either like one or the other. Like there's people that are either like totally cool with walking away and like they're fine and they'll take their money and they run, or there's people that, it's been their entire life and they get in a dark, deep place, after they retire where, they don't have that anymore. They don't have what they had for their, and so I feel like there's no middle ground there. There's no one that's like, maybe, it's like people are either like peace out or they're miserable. It's interesting,
Yeah, it is. There's an interesting story. So over Josh Norman and his blabbermouth, but he's running his mouth talking about Demaryius Thomas, and then he got owned by one of his own. I think it was Deshaun Jackson. But Demaryius Thomas wasn't the same last year. Do you expect that he's going to rebound and be as good as he has been?
I hope so. It was really it was tough to watch him last year. There was a lot of drops, a lot of just, granted, he had a lot of things in his personal life going on, with his mother being released from jail and all of that. And I think, that might have come into play. I'm not really sure. It's going to be tough to see because, of course, the quarterback situation. We don't really know what we're dealing with. So I think if there's a good chemistry, with whoever ends up being the starter and him, I hope that he can get back on track because he's super talented. He just had,
he really is.
It was just a rough year, and I think, you've got Emmanuel Sanders, obviously, and then, that third slot is still kind of, an unknown. I mean, Latimer was playing.
I was going to ask you, is Cody Latimer going to finally snag? I mean, we keep hearing it's Cody Latimer's year, but it's never Cody Latimer's year.
Yeah, in the past, from what I've heard, it's been like a mental thing as far as he's not able to grasp the playbook, which is not a good thing, but it can happen. There's guys out there that just, unfortunately, don't have the mental capacity to kind of, it's a tough game. I mean, there's a lot. You need to kind of, I know a lot of people say, oh, dumb football players, but I mean, you have to have.
Well, I think Gary Kubiak's playbook is pretty intense anyway.
Right, and I mean, I mean, honestly, I think they all are, but he, so I think that was kind of the issue the first 2 years, he wasn't able to kind of grasp it. From what I've heard, he's had a great camp, but he hasn't had a great preseason as far as the game. So, unfortunately, I think Benny Fowler was in line for that, but he's now hurt. He has a hurt elbow, so he's out for a bit. There's that Jordan Sunshine Taylor. He's kind of been the little darling of camp as well, so he he may get in there a little bit too. But hopefully Latimer can step up. I mean, once again, he's super talented and just hasn't lived up to it yet. And I feel bad for a lot of people to have him.
What about the other Jordan Norwood?
Norwood. Yeah, he's Yeah, I'm not sure. I've heard glimpses of good stuff, from him. I think he's going to probably be a special teams guy. I mean, I'm not sure if he's going to end up out there, as the third guy. I'm not really sure. I guess we'll have to see. Once again, you don't know who is going to actually gel with these quarterbacks. I mean, Simeon, last year, was throwing to a lot of these guys that were, lower down. So he may actually have better chemistry, than with, the main. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Definitely bears watching. We can't not talk about receivers and the passing game without throwing some shine toward a guy that you and I think is finally going to fulfill his promise, and that's Virgil Green.
Yes, Virgil Green's exciting. I mean, the Broncos have been excited about him for a while. He just they used him, for mostly blocking, in the last few years, and he's good. I mean, he's huge. But I think we're going to finally see him emerge. I know, Howerman was, in the mix as well for a bit. He was hurt the entire last season, so no one got to see what he was about. So this year it was everyone was thinking it would be he'd emerge as the number one, but Virgil has, which is great. I'm super psyched for him. He's a good guy, and he's very athletic.
I've always
he's
liked
a great
him too. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a great blocker, but I think it's time for him to actually, make some plays. And I'm hoping, that he'll get a lot of red zone attempts.
I've taken a few later round flyers on him, so I own some Virgil Green shares. I'm excited about his potential. Can't wait to see. Got to ask you, if you've been burned in fantasy football like I have, I know other people will do this too. I will avoid you like the plague. And C.J. Anderson has definitely burned me last year. Is he going to regain? And I've never really bought it much into Ronnie Hillman. What's the situation there? Is C.J. Anderson going to regain his mojo or not?
It's funny. Before I answer that, it's funny that you were talking about people that burn you. I just right before being on this with you, I was writing my 4for4 mailbag, and that was one of the questions. Like, if someone burns you, do you? So I'm laughing because I just spent the last hour writing about it. But yes,
well,
CJ,
No,
for sure. I think as I said, the offensive line is definitely improved. So I think regardless of who's back there, I think they're definitely going to have a legit running game this year. I think Anderson, I think he is the number one right now. I honestly think that the rookie Devontae Booker, may actually surpass him. I mean, he's currently right now listed second.
I've almost bid on him later on in the draft, but so far I haven't.
Yeah, I have a little bit of him in MFLs, but because I knew he'd beat out Hillman, which he has. So right now he's kind of in the second spot, and I think it just depends. I mean, CJ. It's tough. I mean, he had a rough year last year, and some of it was his fault, and a lot of it wasn't. I mean, the O-line was really, really bad, and then Peyton was struggling, and the offense was just horrible last year all around. Yeah. So, I think this year kind of he has a new contract. He's excited, and I think he's in good shape. He's healthy. So I think he should, I think he'll have a decent year. Now, I'm not taking him in fantasy football, but I do think he'll have a good year, and I do like Booker and Hillman. I've never really been a Hillman fan, and he kind of sticks around. He's still here, and Capri Bibbs is on there too, and I'm not sure what they're going to end up doing about that, if they're going to keep all four of them or what. But Hillman's just he's kind of one of those people, like he has one really good play. He like last year he ran for 72 yards against the Vikings, and like people kind of hang on to that, and they're like, see, but he can do it, and it's like, but once a year is not really. It's not going to cut it. So, I'd be okay if they, cut ties with Hillman. He's just been here every year kind of doing nothing, really. So, yeah. But I think CJ will definitely be the main guy, and I think Booker will kind of be there. And hopefully this year, and they also, by the way, have a fullback that they like. And, Kubiak likes himself a fullback. So, Janovich is in the mix. So he, He'll take a little bit away from those guys too, I think.
You mentioned Malik Jackson, of course, Danny Trevathan, and I just have to say, and I'm scanning the roster real quick, it's no longer Tennessee Volunteer West, with Peyton, Peyton retiring and And so I can't give you a hard time anymore about.
I know, isn't that sad when that happens? Like I hate.
It
there's no Georgia players anymore. Like I had No Sean for a long time, and Champ Bailey was here for a long time, and so I had my dogs, and now I don't have any. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, just real quick, it's very interesting times in the SEC. College football is just around the corner. I want to talk some fantasy football, but I have to ask you, what are your expectations for Georgia, and do you like the changes that they've made?
I'm excited. I was sad when they let Rick go because I wasn't sure. I was like, people are
you never
annoyed
know if
that
it's
they
time or not.
Yeah, and it's like, there's a lot of people out there that don't remember what it was like before Rick, but I do, and they were really bad. So, I was sad, but I think Kirby Smart, was a good choice, and I'm he kind of, everyone's pretty fired up. I'm excited to see, these young quarterbacks. They have that Jacob Eason, who, there's a lot of hype surrounding him, so I'm kind of excited to see him, and I'm excited to see how they do this year. I know they have unfortunately some running back injury issues. I think Chubb is still injured, and but I think it's exciting. I'm always geared up for the start of college football season, and how it is. Everybody's undefeated to start off, so I'm excited.
That's right. Yeah, Tennessee's getting a lot of off-season love. Seems to be making a lot of fans, in particular some Georgia fans. Are you buying the hype or not?
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. Am I buying the hype for what?
For Tennessee. They're getting a lot of off-season love that's making some Georgia and other SEC fans mad.
Yeah, Tennessee always worries me, They always worry me. Even when they're not supposed to worry me, they always do. And you know how it is. In the SEC, it doesn't matter, It's everybody, plays up to their competition, plays down to their competition, and I think,
Georgia tough. They're always tough for whatever reason. They can't seem to get over that Florida hump, but they play Georgia tough every year.
Yeah, and it's a great rivalry, and like I said, I never the only team I really ever, I say Vanderbilt is probably the only team that I'm not concerned with. Even Kentucky now makes me nervous, and South Carolina, they all make me nervous these days, and Spurrier is gone, which is fantastic. Just because I can't stand him. But, of course, he's back at Florida doing in some capacity, so I guess we'll still have to see him in his visor.
He is. I have mixed emotions about Steve Spurrier. He's a guy that you kind of love to hate, and I understand a lot of people hate him and all that. I like, he's a guy that I like to poke with a stick.
Yeah, he was just, he was there my entire college. They just were so dominant over us the whole time, and he was, he was the coach when I was at school. So I just, he makes my skin crawl. I can't stand him.
So who's going to win the East and who's going to win the East? Who's going to win the West?
Well, I'd love to say Georgia, but scarily, I don't know. I don't know. It's too early for that. I can't give you predictions.
Okay. Well,
I'm not ready.
You'll have to come back. We'll talk about that.
Yes.
Let's turn our attention
we'll circle back to that.
Yeah. We'll turn our attention to fantasy football real quick and then let you get out of here because I know that you've got a lot of things going on. First of all, and I usually ask this of people, and you and I have talked about it before, but it's been a while. How did you get into fantasy football?
When I graduated college, whatever. I'm not afraid to show my age. I graduated college in '94. And I had some friends that were they were kind of starting a league. I didn't really know what it was. And then finally, with 96, basically, I was about to move to Denver, and some of my college friends were like, all right, we're doing this league, So one of my friends was like, just share a team with me. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll get my feet wet, that way. So I shared a team with a good friend of mine that year, and then that was it. So that was the fall of 96. So believe it or not, this will be my 20th year playing fantasy football, which is insane to think that. But yeah, I remember the first year was just, I had relatively no idea what I was doing. But of course I know the NFL well and I follow it. So, I thought, well, and it just, of course I was hooked from that day. It's and of course the whole industry has obviously grown. Tremendously.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it's like when we first started, there was nothing.
What kind of team did you have? Was it a redraft league? What kind of league did you start with?
It was a redraft. I think it was your standard, just the standard lineup. Right. I do remember the one thing that drove me crazy, which is why I actually ended up leaving that league. I was in that league for probably 10 years, but they had like this weird, you had to pay per transaction. So like to make any move, like to drop someone or pick someone up, you had to pay like $2. I'm like, what? So and like real money, not like not your budget, like real money.
Yeah, that was
pay.
mine
so,
too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I was like, this is not fun. Like, why am I, So, but yeah, I think it was just a standard league, and we had to call in our lineups, via phone, and look up all the stats in the paper. It was before the internet, so. And then just over the years, it's amazing that it's a legitimate industry now. I mean, like I get paid to write about it. It's kind of insane, and so, but yeah, and over the years I've kind of, dabbled in different types of drafts and, different things. And I'm down to, I'm actually only in one redraft league this year, which is kind of exciting for me. I other than the, the fishbowl, I guess. Yeah, I think so. I'm going to be doing, just a lot of MFLs and some daily, and I'm going to concentrate on the one. I have that one redraft, and then the Scott Fish Bowl, I guess, is technically a redraft because you do set a lineup every week.
Mhm. Yeah, my first league too, and I had forgotten about that until you just mentioned it, which is because the keeper league. There was a buy-in. It was for the time. It was pretty. This was 2004. It was I think like $200. It was pretty. It might have even been more than that. But anyway, I remember one year I won. It seems like I won like $400 from it. So anyway,
nice.
It was. Yeah, I made it to the playoffs my first year, which was completely and utterly because of Curtis Martin. But anyway. You had to. You got, I think, 1 or 2 free transactions before the waiver transactions before the season started, and then after that it was pay as you play and pay to go, and everyone in the league had to approve, and because it was the internet was just starting, and we did everything by Excel spreadsheet. And submitted lineups by email and live draft and all that. It was so cumbersome, and so now what you have is really amazing.
Yeah, it's funny when people complain about like being commissioner. I just laugh. I'm like, no, commissioner was like a real job at that time. Back in that day, you had to add up scores and put people's lineups. And like now, you don't do anything. All you do is set up the league, if that, And I just laugh when people complain about being commissioner. I'm like, you don't have to do anything. It's not really a big deal.
It's a lot easier now. That's definitely true. Do you have a favorite type of a fantasy team that you love?
You mean like? Well, I like. I'm a big fan of either a 2-quarterback or like a super flex. Where you can play a quarterback in that position. I like that a lot because I think it just makes it changes the whole draft, and it makes it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
You actually have to care about the quarterback. Nowadays, there's a few that go early, but you can wait, quite a bit, especially this season. There's a lot of really deep quarterbacks.
You can almost screen them, just almost, not quite.
I know.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think if you have a 2-quarterback league, you can't do that, because everyone is drafting probably at least 3. So you're down there at the by the time you're taking your backup, it's it's someone that may play, may not play, So I think that's fun. It changes the draft a little bit. I think that's kind of my favorite way to go. I still have not done IDP, and I know that I should, but it's just I'm kind of scared to open up that can of worms because I have so much else going on,
I started Daily Fantasy this year, and I'm doing a diary for Inside the Pylon of my journey. And so my first,
cool.
I picked my first submission for them was the first time that I sat down and did a DFS roster, and wine was involved, and hopefully people enjoyed it. I'll have to tweak that back out after we get done. It's interesting. The quarterback thing is interesting because you always have there are fads or trends that are the zero running back thing, and then now it's I wouldn't say it's zero quarterback, but there's definitely a trend right now to take quarterbacks slower. But I never do. It's like, oh, they're so shiny and pretty. Look, there's Aaron Rodgers, click, and I just never do. I probably invest higher than a lot of people, maybe most people, but I don't like waiting and being stuck with Colin Kaepernick or whoever.
Right. No,
so
I think I'm kind of in the middle. I think on that. Like I'm not going to jump and take Cam or Russell Wilson. I may. It just depends. But I'm kind of in the middle. I don't want to get stuck like you. Like I'm kind of more in the middle where. Oh, you do. You have. See, it's funny. I actually invested in him last year, which turned out to be phenomenal because
I did
he
too.
wasn't.
Yeah.
But I think this
cheap.
year at least
he was so cheap
I know.
last year.
He was, and I think this year, like in MFLs, I have a lot of like Rivers, and like in that realm, kind of the middle. Like I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna, like you said. I mean, I'm not gonna end up, stuck with Kaepernick or whatever. But I kind of that second tier is good with me. Roethlisberger, Rivers, Breeze. Those I feel like are, I can kind of.
Yeah,
I think Breeze is tough. Breeze is one of those where I feel like he alternate years. Like one year he's amazing, and then the next year he falls off the face of the earth.
I had him that 1 year he threw like a gazillion interceptions, and it was gross and awful. And I don't think I've drafted him since then. And Scotty Fishbowl, because of the way the scoring system, I went for Tyrod Taylor. And
I have him too. Yep. I have actually in that fishbowl. I think I have him and Russell Wilson, which is going to be great. I really like my team.
That's a good tandem. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like my team for that. I have, we've done a bunch of staff 4-for-4 leagues. Josh has been kind enough.
Josh is great.
Oh yeah, he's been. He's put the bill for.
What a great guy.
Yeah, shout out to Josh Moore for sure. He's put the bill for several staff MFLs. And it's been fun, kind of drafting in that. And I think I have Breeze. I may have Breeze in a few of those. I'm not really sure. But I think, like you said, he's a tough one, but I'd rather have him than, like, Bridgewater or Kaepernick. It's like at least he's got some good weapons, and he'll throw some up there.
I'm very concerned about
Teddy
Bridgewater. I don't know what's going on. He's not – he hasn't thrown a pass. And I don't, what's going on? What is their offense going to be?
Yeah.
I've avoided Teddy Bridgewater. I've got maybe too many Marcus Mariota shares, but he's so shiny. I just can't resist. He's so pretty.
He is, and it's funny. He's one of those that I've actually wanted, and I just have never ended up being in the right spot to get him. You know what I mean? Like he either is. I don't know. I just haven't seemed. I don't think I have any of him this year, and I know Winston is kind of in a similar spot, and I just haven't. I don't have much of him either, if anything. I don't think.
I'm trying to think who else. That's pretty much the list. I don't think there's any other quarterbacks that that I have. What are your strategies? We'll talk about players you're watching and all of that. But what strategies do you employ when you're drafting, and then when you start to look at trades and waivers?
It's funny because the strategy. A lot of people have kind of one strategy and they stay with it. I kind of have a flow. Like I don't know. I don't really have a specific strategy. I'm kind of a best player available kind of person. I don't go in going, all right, I'm going to go zero running back, or I'm going to, I just kind of, I go with the flow. And I think I've always been like that for 20 years. And I know that, people might not want to hear that, but that's really how it is. I just kind of go into it. I feel that that I know my stuff. I know, players that but I kind of go with what happens, and, the only thing, obviously, like we talked about, I'm not going to jump on a quarterback. I'll wait a little bit. As far as tight end goes, now I'm technically the tight end specialist at 4-for-4. So I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of writing about the tight end position. So that's one that I will wait. I'm not taking Gronk. I'm not taking Reed. I'm not taking Olsen. I'm going to wait. There's some good guys out there that I think are going to have some really good years. I like Charles Clay. I think he's going to have a great year. He may not be my first one, but I'll draft him along the way, just especially in MFLs, and just because I think he may have a surprise year. So tight end is a strategy that I do wait a little bit. And I think, you know, I mean, obviously when it comes to like kickers, you know, I'm a last spot no matter what. I mean, I'll never draft a kicker before the final round because they're just they're you know, they're as streamable as you get. You could you know, not even have one. But some people take them earlier, and I'm like,
I don't. It depends on the league, but there are a lot of times that I'll stream kickers and defenses, and I might draft one, but I definitely will not, you know, in a standard read, or even sometimes even in PPR, you know, depending on how many teams are in there and other factors too. I might not. I might just invest in skill players. There's one league that I've been in several years, which is a PPR IDP league, and you know, there are times that I'll just not draft a kicker or whatever and stream, or you know, it to me, and I'm kind of like you, Jen, in that I don't have my one and only hard fast rule, I suppose, is to have fun. Yeah, this is supposed to be fun, and sure, you know, I'm as competitive as anybody. I want to win, and you know, if it's a money league, I want to make money and all of that. But I want to have fun, and I want to have a team that I'm comfortable with, and I'm like with guys that I like rooting for, and so that's kind of what I tend to focus on. And the other thing is I try to just let the draft come to me. Now I'll jump at guys. For example, and you and I were in this draft, and so we can talk about it. Slowest draft ever.
Oh, that all-female draft? Oh, yeah,
yes.
It was brutal.
Oh,
brutal.
my God, it was awful. It was so brutal.
It's bad when you know you don't even remember your team. Like, it's like you have to go back and be like, who do I have again? Like, you don't even remember anybody on your lineup. Because,
Yeah, it was excruciating. But actually, it wasn't that one. It was. And where I was drafting, it was going to be like 2 days before I was going to draft again. And so I was looking at, you know, and so there, in a situation like that, I'll jump and be like, well, I'm okay. And it was probably Derrick Henry because I've taken him like everywhere, which is kind of crazy. But, you know, it was a situation where I was like, well, you know, he might be there, whoever it was, and it probably was Derrick Henry. He might be there 2 days from now, but I'm going to kick myself if I come back 2 days from now when he's gone and I didn't do this. And so in a situation like that, I'll jump. But usually, generally speaking, I'll just let the draft come to me and you know, see what's out there, and I always look around too, because I don't always agree with the ADPs and how they line up, and things change, you know, from the time that these are set and until you draft. A lot of times it just changes. You know, guys get hurt or whatever, or retire, you know, or whatever, and so you have to look at that too. But I'll just look and see what, you know, and I try to get the best value that I can.
Yeah, I'm kind of, exactly. And it's funny, before when you were talking about, you know, defenses and streaming, I'm the same way. Like, unless I have, like, the number one or the number two, which I end up, you know, I always end up streaming because you just get frustrated with them, you know. Because for me, it seems like whatever defense I get, you know, they end up not being very good. So I end up having to stream anyway. You know, last year I was fortunate. I took the Broncos everywhere because nationally nobody, for some reason, they were not in a conversation, and I knew they were going to be as good as they were, you know, and so I had them everywhere, which was fantastic for me. This year it's funny because I feel like it's going to happen again because people are saying that they're not going to be as good because they lost a couple players, so I'm like, I'll take them again. I have no problem with it, you know.
What other guys are you watching or are you drafting, and what guys are you avoiding?
You know, it depends on. Excuse me. As far as, you know, it's funny. I just made a pick right before getting on this call, and I was stressed out. You know, it's funny. The wide receivers, you know, as we all know, they're super deep this year. But then when you kind of get to that tier with like Brandon Cooks, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, like that, Sammy Watkins, like that tier, I can't. It's very frustrating to me because I don't like any of them, and I feel like. You know, so, and like Alshon is in there too, you know. I've avoided Alshon Jeffrey.
I have avoided him.
I have too, and I ended up I took Mike Evans, which I have been avoiding all season so far, and I just took my first share.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have too, and I just took my first share because I'm like, you know what? I mean, I can't, the reason I'm avoiding him is because he completely screwed me last year, and I'm like, I can't do that recency bias, for the entire season. I'm like, because, he's leaner. He lost like 20 pounds, he's really tall. I mean, he should, I feel like Winston has to throw to somebody down there. And so I took him, I don't think I'm going to take him in redraft, to where I have to deal with it every week and be frustrated. But in NFL where I'm not looking or paying attention, I took him, we'll see what happens. But yeah, so I've been avoiding Alshon and, Evans in that kind of realm. As far as the running backs go, there's, Lacey's one of those, those every year is this going to be the year, so I pretty much avoided him, I'm a little scared of Jamal Charles too, he's hurt. I haven't really taken him, I've been, it's interesting, I like Lamar Miller. I've been taking him when I can.
See, I'm avoiding him, which is probably stupid, but I don't know. He'll, and good luck to him. I hope he balls out. I just don't know. Well, I guess.
Yeah,
we'll see.
He had a tough run with the Dolphins. Well,
I'm scared of the Texans' offense. Man, they're already talking about Tom Savage might be starting, and you and I just talked about Brock Osweiler. He's not looked good in the preseason. I'm terrified of their offense.
Yeah, I haven't taken any DeAndre Hopkins, and everyone, he is, everyone's all over him, and I have yet.
I took him and Scotty Fish.
Yeah, I have not. I have 0 shares of him, so, and, I hope he does well. I had him last year, and, he's definitely talented. It's just, I'm a little scared of that. I think Miller, though, Miller, he just had a rough go in Miami. I think this, fresh team, I think, I'm kind of excited about him just to see. He's going pretty early, so I think I don't have a lot of him because he ends up kind of either going before I get there or, I'm not willing to, waste that high of a pick on him. I think, Devonta Freeman is someone else that's a little bit in that same, conversation. Last year he had this crazy breakout year.
I'm not nearly as worried about him as a lot of people, and even though his numbers could drop off, and I think that's fine, there was no way he was going to keep up those numbers anyway, but I still think you're going to get consistent numbers from him. But speaking of Miami, I am completely and utterly avoiding the Miami offense. I have 0 shares of any Miami skill players.
Yeah, I think I may have like a Jarvis Landry or 2, but that's it. I definitely don't have Tannehill. It's tough because that's that's my second team. That's the team I grew up with. From birth. My family has been season ticket holders since the inception of the team. And it's so hard to see them struggle. But I think Adam Gase. With Adam Gase as their coach, I think hopefully they will be better. Adam Gase is kind of a miracle worker in the quarterback realm. So I'm interested to see what he can do with Tannehill and Landry. And what's the other guy? Devontae Parker? Yeah.
Yeah, Devontae Parker.
And then and you've got Jordan Cameron. I don't know. It'll be interesting. I don't know if I'm interested enough to take any of them, but at the same time, I'm going to be interested to watch and kind of see what happens there. And now, and then they have Arian Foster now, so that's interesting as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You mentioned Jamal Charles. Let me tell you the dilemma I had last night. And Jamal Charles has been. I'll let you go after this. I know you're really really busy. Jamal Charles has been so dominant for so long, but again that drop off, and so here I am at 12. I like 12 in a draft, and I was looking for a running back. My wide receiver core is very good. I could have taken my second quarterback, but I was looking at Justin Forsett, Darren Sproles, Christian Michael, and some guys like that. And, man, that's a tough decision.
I know. When you get to that tier, you're just
yes.
I just, what? I'm not really that. The Ravens, I don't know. I'm not the Ravens now. Receivers I would take, but the Ravens running backs just it's they've been a committee for so long, and it just makes me nervous. You got Buck Allen in there, who I don't know. I don't know. I've kind of been avoiding them, just because it's such a committee. And the thing is, it may Forsett may end up emerging as the number one, or I just don't know. he scares me enough. Now it depends. If it's low enough, round wise, where really, you're not losing anything by taking him, I would. I'm not like anti. I'm definitely not going to like reach for him or seek him out. You know.
Yeah, it is. It's very scary. Jennifer, it's always such a pleasure. I kept you way too long. Tell everybody once again out there where they can find you and find your work.
Yeah, I am on Twitter. I am at the Monday Mommy, and you can find me at 4for4 Football. I'll be doing, once the season gets underway, I'll be doing a weekly tight end streaming piece on Tuesdays, and then on Thursdays I have my weekly mailbag. So if anyone has any questions about anything, doesn't even have to be fantasy football, whatever, you can tweet me at the Monday Mommy.
Very, very, very good. Thanks again for joining me. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too, Sharona. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. All right, that was our girl Jennifer Eakins. It's been too long since we've chatted. I kept her far too long, but it's just such a pleasure. Times in fantasy football. I said it's kind of funny because I said that I was going to cut back and like maybe only do 5 leagues, 6 at the most, and because I did like 12 last year, and as it turns out, it looks like I'm headed toward 12 again this year. So, I don't practice what I preach, apparently. But always fun to play fantasy football. And, of course, we like to talk about fantasy football on this show. A bit of a programming note on Friday. We'll be doing our Friday show as per usual. I'll be sitting down with my good friend Matt Wood. Shout out to Matt for helping me with my Gawker article. We'll be talking some more about the elections. We're going to talk about Gawker and what happened with them. Matt's always so insightful about a number of things. The job aspect of it is. We're also going to talk about some other things and definitely touch upon some of the privacy aspects as well. I want to return back to, before we get out of here, we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to return back to this Josh Brown thing and the notion, that because it was divorce proceedings and and what have you, that Josh Brown's now ex-wife might have lied about the domestic violence allegations. And, this aggravates me, frustrates me, makes me mad. The narrative has for so long been that women cannot be trusted when it comes to allegations about crimes against their person. And at some point you want to think that there is progress being made, that there, and listen, I understand, you have a client that comes in and gives you a story and tells you a story. Let me tell you a story. As a very, very young attorney, practicing criminal law, I had a client come in and tell me a story regarding a child custody issue wherein he said that his ex-wife was fabricating charges about abuse, and he swore by this story. He swore by it. We sent our clients for a lie detector test, and he failed it, and came back in, and we had a series of follow-up conversations with him, and as it turns out, the story kept changing, and it became completely different from the initial story that had been told. We don't want to believe women when they say that there have been crimes committed against their person, violence committed against their person, and this goes back to the Bible with Adam and Eve, and that Jezebel Eve giving it, that women are these evil, horrible people who lie and entice men and make you do things ordinarily do, or whatever. And it's just, I'm infuriated that this would be the the tactic that we would take toward this in the year of our Lord, August 24th, 2016, 9 Jezebels. You know, there's still a lot of progress to be made when it comes to believing women when they say that there have been these kinds of crimes committed against them. And I don't know what it's going to take to make the conversation, you know, not revolve around that. But we're definitely still there, and it's frustrating. And you know, we'll see how this story continues to develop. But you know, at some point you got to start believing us when we say that these things happen, and you know, and it's wrong. And so here we are. You know, the Ravens tried to do it, and then now the Giants are trying to do it. You know, trying to say that you can't believe this woman when she says that this happened. And it really is, it's just such a sad thing. So I don't know. We'll be back on Friday with another episode. We're going to go ahead and call it a day, a little bit early today. I hope that you've enjoyed today's show. Shout out to OJ Spivey for joining me in the first hour to talk about the Olympics. We'll have to talk about the Olympics some more, follow up on some of those stories. Now, I want to get his thoughts on the Olympic basketball team. And also, of course, to our girl, Jennifer Eakins. Always such a pleasure to talk to her. Happy Hump Day. I hope that you have a great rest of the week. We'll be back on Friday.